Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, February the 15th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast. We do try to watch our language, although, albeit most of the time, words do fly. Also, at the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, where do we go to from here on this? Considering that I am not gonna lie, we might as well start with let's start with something easy stuff. We gotta go easy stuff because we're gonna get into a little bit later because Black History Month and unseasoned mayo are wilding, and trust me, they're wilding. But even more so, that they're wilding on Biden's next pick for the IRS. That they are grilling him, and keep in mind, that man that's being shown there is Daniel Wefferle. He is Joe Biden's next pick to run the Internal Revenue Service, the most three dreaded letters in the English language for a lot of Americans, the IRS. Well, he is actually on the Hill right now, being grilled by conservatives over the $80 billion modernization. Now, for a lot of y'all that don't remember, Biden and company did get a bill passed to get funding in the amount of $80 billion for the IRS to improve a lot of things, to improve audits, to improve tax returns, and a multitude of things. Conservatives, on the other hand, decided that this was a perfect time to sit there and say that the IRS is going to go after everybody who's not a millionaire or a billionaire, which is simply not the case. Anybody who's ever dealt with the IRS, called the IRS, filed a tax return, have always said the same thing. It's slow, it takes a lot of time, and by the time they get to you, you almost forgot about it. Well, here's the problem with that. The fear that the conservatives are pushing forward is just paranoia. The whole idea, we as Americans keep complaining that the IRS is slow. You call them, you're on hold times for at least an hour. You're hard enough to get a person. You're getting directed to a website or one of those chat AI bots. But now that we've given them the tools they need to actually get proper staff to hopefully cut down on wait times, give faster responses, people think that, this is just going to lead to a lot of people being audited for no reason. Let me tell you something. There is a reason why millionaires and billionaires don't complain about taxes. They don't complain about taxes to the level that us normal folks complain about taxes because they know they're covered. At the same time, they have CPAs, they have former IRS former IRS employees, tax audit lawyers. But be that as it may, it's just not what the Republicans are trying to paint the smokescreen on. That literally the $80 billion is going to help the IRS. And the funny part is, imagine if they did the same thing toward the U.S. Postal Service, if they did toward the Department of Education, if they did it toward Health and Human Services and injected much needed money into those areas. Would those services improve? By a freaking mile. Will Republicans still complain? Absolutely. But as I said before, previously on this podcast, I have said before, what is going to wind up happening is that now that Republicans run the House, they are going to run a bunch of BS investigations that do not help the American people at all. Don't believe me? Wait for the one for Hunter Biden's laptop to show up and then get the popcorn. That's going to be funny. Now we got that part of the way. Now we have to talk about this. It's Black History Month. And of course, it's not just a month for us. It's Black 365 for a lot of us. So even though we did get the shortest month out of the year, I personally think that's kind of a F you to African Americans, but I digress. That being said, you would think for one month, albeit 28 days, for 28 days, you would think that we could not have any issues with white peopling. I was wrong. I was so very, very, very wrong.
Called, flabbergasted. There's no words. I'm like, is this even real?
This is how a daycare in Miami celebrated Black History Month. A classroom full of 2-year-olds in blackface.
Where are the checks and balances, right? So nothing like this happens.
Good job. Courtney Politis, whose 1-year-old daughter attended the daycare but was not in this particular class, says she was horrified when another parent at the school shared these photos originally posted on the daycare's app. They have since been removed.
I get a phone call from a close mom friend whose child also goes to this school. And she's like, oh my gosh, you won't believe what they've done in our child's class. Like, I'm sickened right now. I'm completely, there's no words. And I'm like, well, tell me. She's like, well, they painted all the children's face, blackface, and sent messages out saying Happy Black History Month.
She reached out to daycare owner and director Patricia Vitale that same day.
And immediately sending the screenshot over to her, and I let her know, I'm like, this is racist. Her response, I'm sorry, ? I don't understand. What are you saying? What is racist? Blackface. In our school, we don't use this word, neither. We have this kind of mind.
As a mother of 2 young biracial children, Politis says it's hard to protect them.
I thought we would have more time before these sort of things or racism or microaggressions would have to be experienced by our children.
Reached by CNN, Vitale declined to comment. But in a message sent to parents the day of the incident, Vitale wrote, "We have received a comment from one of our parents regarding the activity that was done in a teacher's class for the Black History Month. We have not intended to offend anyone, and we're very sorry about any inconvenience." The following Monday, Vitale sent another message about improving the training of daycare staff. Following the Black History Month incident, we wanted to let all the parents know that we met Friday afternoon with all the teachers and staff. We went over several ethical and multicultural education points. I will teach them a class covering all the necessary topics regarding U.S. history and multicultural education. You may rest assured this will never happen again. But that promise wasn't enough for Politis. She's pulled her 2 children out of 2 separate branches of the Studio Kids daycare and is looking for another childcare provider.
Bottom line is we can't trust them with our children.
And that's the thing that's most concerning to Courtney Politis, that she can't trust these administrators to take care of and educate her children. And she said, I understand that teachers have the freedom to create activities for the class, but there are so many other ways you could have celebrated Black History Month.
Yeah, like actually having Black History Month, like actually teaching kids who are non-melanated and melanated children. You could have taught them historical figures. Dr. Danielle Williams, Wilma Rudolph. I'm just throwing out 2. Mary McLeod Bethune-Cookman. You could have done Jesse. You could have done Jesse Owens. You could have done Dominique Dawes. You could have done anyone. You could have done so much more. But it amazes me that even though it's in Florida, which again I'm going to get to very soon, because a lot of people are going, it's Florida. The dictator / governor Ron DeSantis just cut AP African American Studies. Well, I get it. Trust me, I get it. Go with me on this. This is a daycare. Do you understand how easy it is in daycare to go over different things? And I have to ask this question: why is it only on Black History Month do we catch as hell? I mean, it doesn't happen during. It doesn't happen during Latinx Awareness Month. It doesn't have Latinx Heritage Month. It doesn't happen during there. It doesn't happen during LGBTQ plus month where we're celebrating that cultural aspect. It doesn't happen there. I can't think of a time where, especially, or even during Asian Heritage Month, anytime a ethnical culture is being celebrated, why is it that whenever it comes to us, that in that particular month, we have to get white people, I don't mean all white people, I mean the unseasoned mayo. Why do we have to get them to have a hold my beer contest in what they can and can't do in that month, as if they're trying to outdo somebody? as if they are trying to outdo someone. That's the crazy part. Even more so, where they say, "Oh, I'm going to teach the workers about multicultural." So you knew it was a problem, but figured, oh, because one parent said something, it's like, oh, well, we don't use the term blackface. Just because you don't use the word doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Along with the stereotypes, along with the condescending tone that a lot of male people have when they're pointing out that, yeah, you just might be a little tone deaf, or racist, or nationalist, or all the above. But I don't blame that woman, because again, your child is going to be exposed. Your child is going to be exposed to the world, and that's going to shape their view. And for children of color, it is going to be much, much harder, because you have individuals out there that are literally doing this kind of stuff or trying to whitewash history. And so you can only imagine that, and I speak from an area where a bunch of my friends, and even myself considering cosplaying, we said it all the time. Still said it on a recent podcast, actually, that, for non-people of color, it is completely okay to cosplay as Black characters. You want to cosplay as Luke Cage? Go for it. You want to cosplay as Misty Knight? Go for it. You want to cosplay as Storm? Go for it. We just got one thing to say. Don't do it in blackface. You don't see us going to go reach for some Martha White flour and powder our faces and say we're one of you. That would be stupid. Apply that to blackface. That's all I'm saying. But with the daycare being that tone deaf, I cannot blame the woman for that, just because of the simple fact of the matter. It just goes to show you that level of cultural sensitivity training is needed, should have been done, because you know why? That was daycare, right? That was daycare. Imagine if you saw this in a Catholic school where a bunch of white girls decided that they wanted to spray paint one girl black and say, "You're a Black girl now. You have privilege." Unfortunately, that's not a joke. That actually happened.
Karen, thank you for that update. Turning now to the other headlines we're following right now at 5 o'clock. It circulated on social media quickly this morning. A racist video featuring students at a Catholic school in Philadelphia.
NBC 10's Brian Sheehan joins us live with an update. Brian, walk us through this.
Yeah, so the Archdiocese says it was made aware of the video yesterday. As of this afternoon, it's been viewed more than 500,000 times and caused outrage from organizations and the public.
We shouldn't be seeing color in 2023. What's wrong with y'all?
Community members and parents of children at St. Hubert's Catholic School for Girls are outraged after seeing a racist video circulating on social media featuring at least 3 students. In it, one girl sprays another girl's face black, and you hear one girl making a comment about slavery. Other girls are also heard laughing in the background.
How dare that? Something needs to be done today.
Nicole Hines is one of about a dozen who protested outside the school this morning. This parent of a former St. Hubert student says she pulled her daughter out during her junior year after she repeatedly experienced racism.
They would scream the N-word, or they would, just a lot of microaggressions, pull on their hair and laugh about it, video it.
School officials condemned the actions of the students in the video, putting out a statement saying, "We are extremely disappointed to learn that anyone associated with St. Hubert's would act in such a manner, which is entirely inconsistent with our values. Please be assured that this matter is being actively investigated. All those responsible will be disciplined appropriately in accordance with our school handbook."
The question begs, when will America lose its obsession with anti-Blackness, racism, and hatred? So that's what the question is, and who's going to do something about it?
The Archdiocese of Philadelphia says those students in the video are not present in school and are being disciplined appropriately.
I want justice. I want reform. They have to do something. This cannot continue.
And she's right. Something definitely needs to be done, because, again, keep in mind what I just told you. I just showed you a daycare in Florida that had no problem with blackface. That was a Catholic school in Philadelphia where white girls decided to spray one girl and, go from there. The video's out there. The video's out there where it literally says, "Oh, now. You have the privilege now. You can get curls, you can get braids now." Do you understand the level of cultural insensitivity that is? And it was like, but it's like not that it happens at a religious school. It happens everywhere, because you know what that behavior is? That behavior is learned. Taught, yes, but learned. Do you think them unseasoned male learned it just because? 9 times out of 10, check the parents. Check the parents, check the environment that they're in, because I guarantee if someone that they looked up to said it, they thought it was okay. And even more so, this is why I keep saying, you know what? Even though CRT is not being taught in schools, it probably should be, because we could avoid kids who are exposed to that, teenagers who are in school, thinking it's okay. And trust and believe, they keep on saying we're going to punish those kids in accordance with our school handbook. What does the handbook say on racism? That'd be my question. My question is, what does it say when a student does racist things, and how are they punished? Because I'm gonna tell you why. It's easy to say expulsion. It's so easy, because it's easy to say expulsion, because that's 9 times out of 10, that's what we want. But we don't want it. You know what I want? And this is just my suggestion for behavior like that. Put them with a group of their peers. And by peers, I mean black folks. Put them in with black folks. If they want to do blackface so bad, have them treated like black folks. Jane Elliott a long time ago did a study on that. Blue eyes and brown eyes. It's still on YouTube to this day. I recommend highly everybody to watch that, because she did a set experiment where a group of white kids got treated like black kids, and it broke them. I mean, tears, nose running, it broke them. That would be now for me, that would be a proper punishment for that stuff. Give them that type of experience. I guarantee they'll reform. Then they'll see what it is on the other side, because as Paul Moody once said, everybody wants to be one, but nobody wants to be one. That's just saying. Even more so, like I said before, not just high school, in college, because this was a story last year that we covered. Remember this college student that decided that she was, belligerent and was on a campus, and the poor RA, and I have to give this sister all the respect in the world. Had it been me, I'd knock that out.
Could you stop? No. Thank you. I'm the most. Who's I did not get paid enough for this. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Phone video.
You too.
I got so.
Not really drunk. You're drunk. You're crazy.
Let me put this down.
And you're
Are you okay?
please tell me. Yeah. You're
Girl, what is wrong with you?
What did I do to you? Okay,
And long story short, for all those that don't remember, her parents pulled her out of the University of Kentucky before she could be disciplined, because her parents were well off and actually put her in another school somewhere, and she learned nothing. She literally learned nothing. And the sister that's in there, sister that was restraining her, you were good. You are a saint. Because had it been me, and I say this a long time, and I say this all the time, had it been me, and I tell this to my son. I tell this to my son and my nephews and niece all the time. I say it because it was said to me. They could say anything about you that they want to. But the moment they put their hands on you, handle it. And, as you get older, as I find myself getting older, I have to find myself in those areas where it's like, if I was in that situation and that happened to me and I got a drunk, belligerent Howley in front of me and he's sitting there calling me everything but a child of God, I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have swung. I'm gonna be honest. I would have swung. I would have swung. I mean, you can only verbally take so much, and restraint to the sister in that. But yes, it goes back to the point I'm making about they don't get to learn. Kicking them out of school. In her case, she was charged. She pleaded to a lesser charge, but eventually, yes, her parents pulled her out of school, but she learns nothing. She got bailed out. Similar to the daycare in Florida, they got bailed out because there is no repercussions during Black History Month when stupid stuff is done like that. And that's the part that needs to change. Now, again, I am not saying to completely get rid of them. Not for students, not for younger. I mean, because children can be still saved. Children can be saved up until a point between teenagers and adults. Because once you get that certain line that they cross, you can't change them. They are set. They're going to be exactly what people have, their experiences, their environment. They're going to be exactly that. But as kids, you can correct them. As teenagers, you can correct them. As adults, it's damn near impossible. And I'm just being honest about that. It is impossible, especially when it comes to the fact of getting them to understand that, yes, there are people out there that look differently than you, but at the same time, respect should be given on all sides. Or, disrespect is usually met with with swift response. I'm not condoning violence, but I understand. But again, I don't know what it is about Black History Month that that white people want to wild out. In this case, for a simple fact of the matter is, guys, students at a school in Alabama, right, are walking out. Now, I know walkouts are normal. Glad to see that students are protesting, especially for social justice things of that nature. And in this case, it is no different. And the reason why they're walking out kind of has to deal with Governor/Dictator Ron DeSantis and his attack on our African American studies.
Of Hillcrest High School today in protest. There you see this group here saying that their teachers were not teaching key parts of Black history. Our Brian Henry is joining us now live from Hillcrest to pick up the story from here. Brian.
Well, Sarah, the students walked out of Hillcrest High School earlier today around 9:30. Now, the gathering eventually made its way to the street that you see behind me. As a group, the students felt they were not being heard when it came to sensitive matters such as learning about slavery and civil rights or anything related to Black history before the 1970s. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head. The protest was passionate and energetic, but peaceful.
So a lot of y'all may be asking, why walk out?
Jemiah Brown led the walkout.
Students were told to not include contact or civil rights in the Black History Month program. Students have been denied permission to use the bathroom during Discovery and Mr. Cycle. Starting.
And there's more, according to Brown.
Students told that they look like hookers on the side of the road on a Saturday night.
10th grader Sierra Kelly said there was no way she'd miss this.
We're all one community. There's nothing separate between us. We're all equal.
To run against our.
The protest grew large enough where a sheriff's deputy needed to block part of the road in front of the school.
I feel that.
Lisa Young with the Tuscaloosa branch of the NAACP.
We held a forum last Saturday and discovered that there was a culture here that was not conducive to educating.
Students here say they want a meeting with the county school superintendent and members of the Tuscaloosa County School Board. The protesters say they would like to see a school administration that reflects more of its student body. 55% of the school population is Black, according to the students.
As a collective group, as a body, we should come together and fight against this.
The walkout ended about 40 minutes later with students returning to their classrooms. Points made, concerns aired. All indicated there could be another rally.
And I applaud those kids. I applaud them because, we keep saying the whole time that kids, don't seem interested in school, don't seem interested in learning. And yet in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, of all places, you have a student body that sat there and asked the teachers, why are we not learning more about African-American history, specifically slavery, in those times that make some white people feel uncomfortable? And they asked the question, why is it that we are not why is it that we can't talk about this? Why is it that it is so difficult? And, why, the unseasoned Mayo will always argue that, we don't want to make, and it's like, they'll say, well, we just want to make sure it doesn't have any woke or indoctrination or things of that nature. Oh, you mean like you don't want people to know about the dark history of America? Because America has a dark history. It does. It is not all blue skies and rainbows. Don't believe me? Look at the reason behind Thanksgiving. I'm just going to leave it at that. I can tell you about the internment camps. I can tell you, slavery is an easy layup because that's a dark spot in America's history. But trust me, Stonewall, we could talk about that. We could talk about the riots. We could talk about the burnings in Chicago. We could talk about the burnings in New York, the riots in Detroit, the riots in Chicago. We could keep going down the line about famous Black towns that were successful, that were either drowned out and made into lakes or burned down by white mobs, similar to Tulsa. We could talk about that. But it is amazing how many periods in America's dark history that for a certain percentage of white folks out there don't want it to be taught. Why? And again, that's why I say a lot of us, because I say this all the time, not just for my melanated people, but for my Latinx, my Hispanic people. Our contributions as far as people of color to this country are not just limited to what you see in your history books. I highly encourage you guys, go out to your local libraries, because there are so many more books that you can find about historical figures that need to be taught, that need to be shared, because their contributions to America are limitless in number. But it's amazing that of all those things that the Mayo want to focus on, they focus on the fact that, well, it's just the fact that, do we really need to talk about slavery? Yes, considering your people benefited from it and mine suffered for it. Absolutely. But again, that's not the only thing white people are white people about during Black History Month. Imagine
woman with 3 felonies.
Quiet, you. Imagine, and I said imagine as you will before we go to the next story. Imagine you're a fan. Imagine you're a family of color, and you are constantly harassed by one woman knocking at your door, one white woman knocking at your door constantly that you call the police multiple times on, and that nothing has been done. And it's a scary situation. You don't know what that person can do, and the police aren't doing anything. So what do? You take it to social media. Why? Because if something's viral, it gets attention. Much like this story.
Prosecutors have charged a St. Louis woman with 3 felonies, saying she harassed a family at their home, allegedly because of their Mexican descent, and it's all caught on camera. The frightened family says they have called police numerous times about her alleged racist tirades. ABC's M. Wynn has the story. M, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. Yeah, despite the woman now facing charges, the family tells us they're still scared. And now police are facing mounting questions as to why more hasn't been done to protect the family.
This was what Fatima Suarez and her family saw outside their front door for more than a year.
I'm coming back. You wait and see. Get out! It's my home.
This morning, a St. Louis woman is now facing charges after allegedly terrorizing a family, several incidents caught on doorbell camera video.
American citizen angry at you.
54-year-old Judy Klein charged with first-degree burglary, first-degree property damage, and unlawful use of a weapon. This coming more than a year after St. Louis prosecutors say Ring video shows Klein smashing a hammer into the family's front door. Just moments earlier, Suarez, the homeowner's daughter, alleges Klein broke into the family's back door and got into the house while her 4-year-old sister and dad were at home.
Judy had her hand up with the hammer. She was yelling, "You're a bunch of illegals." A lot of emotions went through my body. Like, she literally had the opportunity to kill my dad or my sister.
A local police department booking data report shows Klein was arrested that day and charged with aggravated burglary and property damage, but that case was not pursued.
It made me feel that we didn't matter at all to the justice system.
Suarez, whose family is of Mexican descent, alleges Klein then returned to their house multiple times, including last week, hurling racist comments at them and even going through their mail.
Get out! You're a bunch of illegals. You don't belong on American property. Do you have something to do with 9/11, Jack?
In these later alleged encounters, Klein didn't face any new charges.
I called the police every time.
Frustrated, Suarez decided to post the Ring videos on social media, which recently went viral, sparking outrage and questions about why police weren't taking action.
They took too long with the charges. I mean, just now, that the video got viral, I was able to get answers.
As of Thursday, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department said Klein was not in custody. They went on to say in a statement, "We will not be commenting any further as this is an ongoing investigation." ABC News could not reach Klein for a comment.
I don't know if this time she might take a gun or something. I want my family to feel like they can be in peace in their own home again.
The Suarez family sought an ex parte order of protection to keep Klein from contacting them. That hearing is set for Wednesday. Eva.
Let me tell you something. I feel for that family. But you know what's so funny? I won't say funny. It's odd. Because you want to know what's odd? That you don't have groups that are usually for gun ownership coming forward and saying this family needs to be protected. You don't have groups like the NRA saying, well, they need to arm. This is the reason why we arm ourselves. Well, this is the reason why we have the Second Amendment. They don't. You would think for a golden opportunity to actually prove that what they stand for would be perfect in this situation to defend this Latino family and say, yes, they need to arm themselves, but more needs to be done. But think about what that girl said the entire time, that this kept going on and that they called the police. Police did nothing. The woman came back, even broke in and called them everything under the sun. You're illegals, you don't belong here, and did damaged door with a hammer, broke in. I'm gonna be honest with you. If that ever happened to my family, I'd probably be in jail. I'd probably be in jail because I'd be exercising my Second Amendment rights. That's just me. You break the door, you catch a stray. That's just the way I feel about it. But it is amazing that the police didn't do anything until this went viral. Once this went viral, then all of a sudden, we must investigate. No, because you got caught with egg on your face. You got caught sleeping on the job. Because it's just like the woman said. Imagine she came back with a gun. Imagine she came back, did more damage. Because a lot of people be asking about the law enforcement's response because, if, like I said, and I hate to say this, she's Mayo. I don't know what it is, but I remember a long time ago, I forgot who said it, that to this day, I'm slowly starting to believe and concede to, because whenever it comes to rules, there are certain laws for them and rules for us, and they are different. Because how else do you explain that a woman can constantly go to constantly goes to another person's home and harasses them and comes out of it unscathed, untouched, if you will. And even more so now that the police department is now, oh, we're conducting an investigation. On who? The officers that ignored it? Or their commanding officer that knew about it? Because trust me, there's going to be some heads rolling, because again, when it's on social media, you get attention. And that's what a lot of people now do today. That's what people do nowadays. If you're not getting a response or you're not getting traction, put it on social media, because outcries equal action. Anger equals action, and negative attention. And they keep on saying there's no such thing as bad publicity. Publicity moves things faster than money sometimes. And trust me, they're going to have a good old time trying to explain that one. But had it been me to protect me and mine's, like I said, I don't condone violence, but I understand. But moving right along, guys, at least there is some good news when it does come to Black History Month. Of course, we do know that Governor Ron DeSantis, Dictator DeSantis, as I'm going to start calling him, has successfully curtailed African-American AP studies in Florida. Governor Murphy out of New Jersey said, no, we're going to increase it. He's actually expanding the course from one school district to actually 26 now, saying that pointing out to Governor Ron DeSantis, quote unquote, prioritizing political culture wars over academics. And I'm for that. I mean, who knew out of Jersey of all places that there would actually be some progression? And I can't knock that, because it goes back into what I said. That we need to teach the full history. You've heard it a lot of times. Black history is American history. And even more so that you have a governor that understands that and is willing to push forward on that. And I cannot knock it. I actually applaud that, even though it's New Jersey. But just saying, at least one governor gets it, because DeSantis is trying to fight. DeSantis is like Trump 2.0. And I'm going to keep pointing this out very soon, because number one, presidential, we're coming into the next year. Next year is presidential candidacy, as the presidential candidates coming out. I'm sorry, let me try it again. Next year is the presidential candidates coming out. And trust me, we know of two already. One just recently announced, and we already know that the former failure in chief is going to run again if he's not in handcuffs, but we'll get to that part a little bit later. However, I must address my backwards state of Tennessee, progressively backwards Tennessee. Why? Because there's a certain bill making the rounds, and if passed, will not only hinder cultural sensitivity, it's pretty much an attack on the LGBTQ plus community. I apologize if I messed that up.
Reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And the latest fight, yet another fight, you could say, considering the conversation we just had, and the culture wars in America, relates to drag shows. Across the country, we're seeing lawmakers propose restrictions on these kinds of shows. And at the same time, they're being targeted more and more often by far-right groups, these events. Just this year, at least 124 drag events faced anti-LGBTQ protests or significant threats, according to GLAAD, an advocacy group. And the LGBTQ plus community not backing down. NBC's Kathy Park takes us to Tennessee, where some are getting ready to fight back.
Veronica Electronica's 21 and Up weekend brunch show is a staple of Nashville's drag scene. But today, the show stops for an announcement.
They want to make drag performances illegal if it's in the public view. So right now, if that law passes, I would be committing a potential felony. Just letting you know.
Tennessee Republican State Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson introduced Senate Bill 3.
The intent of the legislation is just to simply say that you cannot have sexually explicit
entertainment, adult-themed entertainment in a public venue where kids might be present.
The LGBTQ plus community have come out saying, look, it targets our community. How do you respond to that?
Well, I disagree. We're protecting kids and families and parents who want to be able to take their kids to public places. We're not attacking anyone or targeting anyone. I've heard references to this bill that it will ban drag shows. Well, no, it won't. It just says you can't do something that's sexually explicit. It won't prevent someone dressed in drag from being in a parade or being in public.
But Veronica and LGBTQ advocates worry this legislation could create misconceptions that drag is inherently sexual.
I don't know who will be the drag police to judge whether my performance was adult oriented.
What does it mean when someone who is dancing shakes their hips? Cheerleaders clearly do it. Dance teams clearly do it. If a drag queen does it, does that suddenly make it sexual?
Bianca Del Rio, love that dress.
The audience for drag is growing. Drag Story Hour, a nonprofit that holds book readings for kids with drag hosts, went from 1 chapter in 2015 to 45 in the U.S. today. But interest in drag comes amid Republican lawmakers in at least 5 states considering bills to limit drag when children are present. Earlier this month, far-right groups, including the Proud Boys and some armed members, shut down an Ohio drag story time.
Life, liberty, victory, or death!
Tennessee has seen 6 events targeted, plus swirling outrage online over videos like this one, showing what appears to be children handing dollar bills to a drag performer.
There have been news reports about some of these events taking place where parents are there with their kids and they were mortified. That's who reached out to me and some of my colleagues and led us to pursue this legislation.
For Veronica, outrage like this shows a misunderstanding of drag culture. She says tipping is not sexual.
We tip our servers, we tip our bartenders, we tip our hairstylists, and we tip our drag queens. It's just a gesture of appreciation.
Senator Johnson plans to move quickly on the bill after the new year.
As a parent, it's something that I worry about all the time, what my kids are being exposed to.
Now Veronica and her fellow drag queens are ramping up for the political fight of their lives on and off the stage. Kathy Park
And the crazy part about that is that was actually, that was a lot. So it was actually just December of last year. Now, it's unfortunately getting passed and it is being brought up in the Senate. And if it does pass, then yes, that does target drag queen shows. Let me tell you something. I mean, there's a thing out there called Drag Queen Story Hour. Try it again. There's a thing out there called Drag Queen Storytime, which again, I love. Number one, it teaches kids that it's okay to view people that are different than you and still be able to have a good time. 2, it encourages reading. I'm going to be honest. If you've been around Tennessee, especially with a lot of kids, I heavily encourage that mess because you can tell a lack of reading definitely shows. And I mean, it shows a lot. So the Drag Time Story Hour, Drag Queen Story Hour Time Hour is number one, a great thing because 2 parts: encourages reading, introduces cultural sensitivity. It gets kids comfortable with things that don't look like them, It gets kids comfortable with individuals that don't look like them, and that's completely fine. But it is amazing to me that you have those out there who think that, oh, well, drag queen is sexual. It's kind of funny always coming from conservatives, because don't conservatives get caught with LGBTQ plus people all the time in secret affairs and marriages? I'm like, you love them in the closet, but you shun them on the outside. How very Christian of you. I'm just going to point that one out. But no, it is crazy to me that even in our progressively backward state of Tennessee, that you hear a state senator say, well, my constituents, what you mean to say is my constituents that pretty much pay my PACs are the ones complaining about the drag queens and that we must do something about them. No, you don't. You can let them be what they're, again, as he says, the law states that any acts of sexual conduct when children are around, are prohibited. Really? So are we going to take away cheerleaders from high school games? Are we taking away cheerleaders from Titans games? Are we taking away any type of female cheer squads in any function in Tennessee? Because under that law, that's what it means. Oh, well, does it also mean that, women in Hooters will no longer be able to dress the way they are? Or will women at Twin Peaks no longer be able to dress it the way that they are? Because if you've been to Twin Peaks or Hooters, you see where I'm going with this. Because under that law, it would basically qualify that. It would make it a felony. So a woman working at Hooters or a woman working at Twin Peaks could basically commit a felony because there's a 5-year-old staring at her, and only because he doesn't know. Just saying. But it's amazing to me that that's what they want to do. Like, in order for them to get to this point, they have to turn around and sit there and say, "Oh, well, it's only because we saw a kid giving a drag queen performer $1." And there's a lot of you folks that give money out to panhandles outside the road all the time. We don't call you out on it. At the same time, they're performers. Performers get tips. But that just goes to show you how narrow-minded the state legislature is. And not just Tennessee, but as you can tell in 5 other states, they're just trying to limit a performer for what they're doing. But at the same time, I'm just curious, if you're going to stop drag queens from performing where there's children, because they can sit there and say that their shows can be adult, but let's be honest, it will be escalating. Say for instance that law does get passed. If that law does get passed, that means that drag queen performers will have to make their shows adults only. Y'all will still have a problem with it. Y'all can sit there and say, "Oh, but the kids don't want to be exposed to that." You expose them to religious schools that pretty much do more scandalous shit than a Jerry Springer show. But you're worried about a drag queen. Spare me your fake clutching of pearls. That's all I'm saying. But I did talk about dictator Ron DeSantis because Ron DeSantis may have gotten his wish. And what I mean by that is, guys, if you were paying attention to my podcast last week, I said that DeSantis didn't like the fact that Disney did not agree with him on his Don't Say Gay bill. Matter of fact, they actually spoke out against it. Well, Ron DeSantis realized that, hey, Disney kind of governs themselves in a county called Reedy Creek, where Disney basically operates like a mini city unto itself. Well, Governor DeSantis actually had a bill put in to give him control of the special district, and it passed. It passed overwhelmingly. So what does that mean? That means that the bill would rename the district to the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which means that what it's setting up with is that it's setting up for a nice little legal battle between Ron DeSantis and the Disney company. Now, I know a lot of you people are thinking, well, it's Disney. How bad could it be? You really got to take into consideration this. And I don't think DeSantis has really thought this through. Number one, the Disneyland and its surrounding parks have been a cash boom for Florida. Now, with that being said, you don't think that Disney will not turn around, uproot itself, and leave and go somewhere else? You not think another state will gladly take them on? And not to mention the fact that the economic burn it would take if Disney were to leave, because hotels, resorts, restaurants, everything around them benefited from Disneyland. So you can only imagine if DeSantis still goes forward with this and tries to take on Disney, and Disney goes, fine, we'll leave Florida. Yeah, doesn't look good for your 2024 presidential bid, sir. That's all I'm saying. But again, we'll follow that story as it goes along. Now, the other story I want to get to, you guys, is literally a weird one because there was a derailment that happened, and for the longest time, it wasn't reported until now.
In Ohio, residents are demanding answers as they are being told it is safe to return to their homes. Alex Brachet is in Ohio with more. And Alex, we hear that people and animals are feeling the effects. Good morning.
Good morning, Robin. Yes, we've heard that from residents in East Palestine. It's why we have moved 2 towns west of there. But this morning, Robin, there are more questions than answers.
This morning, as residents are told it's safe to return home, unanswered questions remain about potential lingering contaminants from the massive fire and hazardous chemicals.
We are recommending that people in the community consider using bottled water.
This surveillance video obtained by ABC News shows a train about 20 miles outside of East Palestine, less than an hour before that 50-car derailment. The NTSB believes those sparks are from what appears to be a wheel bearing in the final stage of overheat failure. Norfolk Southern says with the EPA, it has completed more than 115 in-home air tests and that none have detected any of the substances related to the incident. It says it's conducted more than 400 tests total. Yet officials are reporting that 3,500 fish across 12 different species have died in Ohio's waterways, and some residents report their pets, including cats and chickens, have died. In East Palestine, these gas detectors dot the town, this one hanging from a stop sign across from Ashley McCullum's house.
What caused it?
Train derailed.
So I don't know if we'll ever have that sense of feeling safe.
And now, in spite of the clean air reports, she's moved her children to different schools after they complained of headaches and pains following the derailment. Now, consumer advocate Erin Brockovich, who fought for clean groundwater in her California town, has stepped in to help.
They've been giving misinformation. They don't trust the information that's coming in, and they were scared.
The governor here says he understands the town's anger. There's a town hall scheduled for tonight. George is expected to be spirited.
Spirited. That's the word we're going with. They're going to be pissed. Again, that happened in East Palestine, Ohio, where a train derailment happened. Now, you're probably wondering, because we don't really hear a lot about train derailments, why did this happen? Well, you can actually tie this to Trump. And what I mean by that is, there was a rule that was passed in Barack Obama that required trains carrying hazardous flammable materials to literally have, electronically controlled pneumatic brakes, or ECP brakes for short. Now, then, this was done under Obama to have all trains carrying hazardous flammable materials to have ECP brakes. Back in 2017, Trump administration rescinded this because the industry said it would cost more than $3 billion to implement. Of course, under Obama, it would be around $500 million. So it was actually asked by the National Transportation Safety Board that, hey, if the train that was derailed, if it said, quote unquote, would ECP brakes have reduced the severity of the accident? The representative said yes. So in so many ways, if we could tie this together, that yes, Trump and his administration may have actually caused this issue to where basically, yeah, his rescindance of that particular component on trains carrying that type of material, simply put, could have led to this derailment. But again, it's amazing that it took so long for the story to get out, unless you were actually in East Palestine, Ohio, which I thought to myself was nuts. Truly, truly nuts. And at the same time, I get it. You don't want to cause widespread panic, but public needs to be informed, especially if they live in that town. I mean, similar to Missouri, similar to Jackson, Missouri, similar to the Flint, Michigan. It's the fact of the matter is you cannot keep something quiet when it affects millions. Why? Because more damage is done in silence than it is giving them a bunch of information. Because we've seen what happens when you give no information and misinformation spreads. But like I said, we will cover that town hall when that happens, because spirited ain't going to be the word. There are going to be a lot of ticked off people. But that being said, guys, there is another thing that I do want to talk about: law enforcement. That apparently the subject of de-escalation is starting to again gain tracks. And because the death of Tyree Nichols and so many others, aside from looking into police reform, they're starting to look into de-escalation. And someone has finally said what me and so many others have been saying, that de-escalation training, when used with law enforcement, is effective.
In January 2023, Americans started hearing reports of a familiar story. 29-year-old Memphis resident Tyree Nichols died in police custody, yet again calling attention to discussions around police reform. After reviewing video footage, the Memphis Police Department immediately fired 5 officers, all part of the MPD's Scorpion Unit, short for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. But millions of U.S. citizens were left wondering why another traffic stop ended so tragically. According to a study from the Police Executive Research Forum, or PERF, some tragic outcomes result from aggressive policing tactics that permeate the culture at U.S. police academies.
The culture of training somehow has gotten translated into barking orders and giving commands and sort of a military kind of thinking. It's not a problem-solving approach. It's not critical thinking.
Compared to other developed nations, studies show that training in the U.S. police academies is in some cases drastically shorter. A 2018 Justice Department study of state and local law enforcement training academies found that the average length of core basic police training in the U.S. is 833 hours or less than 22 weeks. In comparison, police recruits in Japan get between 15 and 21 months of training, police in Germany get 2.5 years of training, and training in Finland takes 3 years to complete. But time spent training isn't the only differentiating factor, according to the PERF study.
So in this country, traditionally the way the police are trained, when they see someone with a knife, is the first thing they do will to be pull out their gun and to bark orders. In the UK, when someone pulls out a knife, they don't have firearms. The first thing a person in the UK will say is, hold on, what's your name? As they're backing up, as they're getting distance from the person.
PERF is pushing for new training tactics that have documented success. In 2019, researchers at the University of Cincinnati published a study on the impact of modern de-escalation training within the Louisville Metro Police Department in Kentucky. Researchers used the Integrated Communications Assessment and Tactics Program, or ICAT, developed by PERF. Over 2 days, ICAT trainers taught de-escalation tactics and critical thinking skills to a group of 62 officers, and the impact was judged to be considerable. After conducting a pre-training, post-training, and 4-month follow-up survey, researchers found that LMPD officers who had participated in the brief training experienced a 28% reduction of use of force incidents and 36% fewer injuries than their peers who had not been given the training. In addition, there's a 26% reduction in injury to citizens with officers who had the training compared to officers who did not.
Turns out that actually using a critical decision model, slowing things down, time and distance, and communicating is not only safer for the person you're dealing with, but it's actually safer for police officers.
Even though research showed that evolved de-escalation training is valuable for officers and citizens, often police budgets don't allocate significant funding for their training programs. A 2020 survey revealed that 71% of U.S. police agencies spend less than 5% of their budgets on recruit training. In Memphis specifically, the police department spent roughly $270 million in 2020, but only $15,500 went towards seminars, training, and education.
Our training is outdated, antiquated, and it is trying to do on the cheap what other places have done in a comprehensive way. There has to be a national commitment to want to fundamentally to identify, train, and to compensate police at a level that makes them professionals. Until that's done, we're going to continue to see these kind of instances.
To a certain extent, he's right. That unfortunately, until something changes, we are going to keep seeing more of the same. Now, it is also amazing to me where you literally have Biden that came out and said, we're going to get more money. And he keeps on saying the whole time, the states have the funds we sent to them. Now, it depends on what they do with it. That's all it comes down to. But if I was in Memphis and you got a $270 million budget, but you're spending less than $16,000 on training seminars and education, where is the remainder of that $269 million and change going to? That would be my question. Because I said it before. The thing about it is that you want policing to change. Look at what these other countries are doing. Look at Finland. Look at Japan. Look at New Zealand. Look at Australia. Look at London. Look at England. All these countries are doing things differently. They are actually giving their policemen more training. They're actually giving their policemen a similar seminars, things to go to. They're teaching them de-escalation tactics. Whereas in America, they believe in intimidation and use of force, which again, we've seen how wonderfully well that has worked out since the beginning of how law enforcement actually started. But let's just be honest, goes right back to slavery. But the thing is, he's exactly right. De-escalation works. Police reform works. Now, whether or not we can get Americans to agree with it, along with the rest of the states and governors and Congress, is a whole nother story. But they cannot ignore the data, unless you're on Fox News. But our last story before we get to our feel-good news segment is, well, this is almost a feel-good news. It's almost a feel-good segment because, again, how many more times, especially in the South, do we turn around and we see a man who has been wrongly accused, where a good chunk of his life was taken away from him, only to finally be exonerated, and just to finally be hearing the words, "You're free to go." It happened to this man.
The conviction of Lamar Johnson in State v. Lamar Johnson, calls 22-941-37068, is hereby set aside.
49-year-old Lamar Johnson spent half of his life in prison for the murder of Marcus Boyd. For nearly 30 years, he has maintained his innocence.
We showed that the city of St. Louis and the state of Missouri is about justice and not defending the finality of a conviction.
Special Prosecutor Jonathan Potts says they spent a year investigating this case before filing a motion in August of last year to get the conviction thrown out.
We actually brought the true murderer out, and he confessed in the open courtroom and admitted that he and not Lamar Johnson had actually killed the victim.
Do you think the justice system truly wronged him in this case?
It absolutely did. This case, on one level is about Lamar, and it's about making sure that an innocent person doesn't spend the rest of their life in prison. But it's also about the justice system being accountable for its own mistakes.
Activist Reverend Darrell Gray says this is truly liberating.
I told him that he is the answer to someone's prayer.
Gray says this is encouraging and gives him hope for all of the other innocent incarcerated people.
This shows that the legislation can work, that the process can work, that justice can work if you apply it fairly.
As Johnson walked out of the holding area a free man, he thanked Circuit Court Judge David Mason, his attorneys, and everyone fighting for his freedom.
All of the people who came out and supported me, and
his family was overwhelmed and so happy to have him home.
He's now going to be able to have those relationships that he's been putting off for the past 28 years of his life. And like you said, in April, I think he's going to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle.
Johnson shared these last few words before riding off to start his life over again.
I'm glad to be free.
I don't blame him. I don't blame that man at all. But yes, imagine nearly 3 decades of your life spent incarcerated and you were innocent. And the messed up part about that story with Mr. Lamar Johnson is that the prosecution still believes, and again, if you're wondering what state this is Missouri, that the state prosecutors at the time still believe that that they had the right person, that he should remain in jail. And I said that, that's what always amazes me, that when you really look at the court system, how things are done, evidence, and how it's presented, especially in southern states, and I say this all the time, it always seems to happen a lot more in southern states than it does in northern states, that once a conviction is done, once they get the guilty verdict, it's toss away and throw away the key. There's never a look back at the evidence. There's never a look back at the conviction, and there was never a look back at, did we get the right person? Because that's how they treat it. Because in southern states, prisons at the time weren't owned by corporations, but prisons were profitable, still are profitable, especially here in Tennessee, because the more prisoners you can store, the more you can charge the state. Missouri is no different than that. But again, imagine there are almost nearly 30 years of your life, 30 years of your life that you don't get back. And the whole entire time you're innocent. I'll be, again, he may, and honestly, he may get reparations for it. He should get reparations for it, really and truly, just because of that, in which he will, depending on what the state considers. They usually charge a fee, things like some amount every day for you're incarcerated, but no amount of money will give you back nearly 30 years. But at least may that man be able to enjoy his days. But again, that's the reason why projects like the Innocence Project exist, because there is a lot of injustice. Who knows how many people are really and truly locked up that are innocent, that may not get the same opportunity as Mr. Johnson did. And that alone is a scary thought. It even more so tells you that the justice system, I know a lot of people say the justice system is broken, that it can work. Here's the thing. Richard Pryor said it best. When you go downtown looking for justice, that's what you find, just us. And the justice system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it's designed. It wasn't meant for us. But that too can change. It can change when we're active in our communities. It can change when we get active in our local governments. It can change when we get involved in our state legislature. It can change. Not everything has to be done at the federal level is what I'm getting at. When you start local and move your way up, that's when you can change things out. And that's what I would tell people to focus on. That's why I always tell people, get active in your communities, get active where you are, because you can change that part. Then you can move on forward. It's not always a presidential seat, as we've seen, because you can be the president all you want to, but if you got two bodies of government that are unwilling to work with you, then all you're going to have is a whole bunch of angry Mayo people staring you at the face. Ask President Obama. He did it for 8 years. But moving right along, we're going to get to our feel-good news segment, because usually how the Frack got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make use of faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday, and we want to leave you guys out with some positive vibes and good vibrations. And I think this next story will do it, because imagine you being a young woman of color that's simply doing a science project and the police get called on you, but instead of a negative outcome, you get a really cool one.
Finally tonight, America Strong. For a moment, a little girl worried she might be going to jail, but instead, she ended up going to Yale. 9-year-old Bobby Wilson is an environment enthusiast. Last October, in an effort to save the trees in her New Jersey neighborhood from the spotted lanternfly,
See that one?
she was testing a natural homemade insect spray.
Yes, good job.
Bobby even stomped them as part of a campaign to see it squish it. She was collecting the lanternflies and using the spray to combat the invasive insects that feed on trees. But her efforts were cut short when a police officer arrived after receiving a complaint from a neighbor. The neighbor reported the 5th grader as a suspicious person. The incident made the news, catching the attention of a professor at Yale University School of Public Health who decided to recognize and honor the young scientist. Professor Ijoma Opara telling the audience, Yale doesn't normally do anything like this. This is something unique to Bobby. We wanted to show her bravery and how inspiring she is, and we just want to make sure she feels honored and loved. Professor Opara organized an event to celebrate Bobby and introduce her to other Black female scientists. Entomologists at Yale's Peabody Museum helped Bobby catalog and mount her collection of 27 spotted lanternflies. Her collection is now officially entered into the museum's database, where it will forever be associated with her name as the donor scientist. Bobby's message to us all tonight:
I want to let every young boy or every young girl or even adults know that nobody can knock you off your way to success. And we all can do our part to save the environment, just like me.
Bobby already doing big things. Thanks so much for watching. Whit Johnson here tomorrow.
And again, that's one of those things where I'm going to be honest, that I loved, because what could have been a psychologically destroying moment for a Black child turns out to be one of the best things for her. And trust me, she's going to Yale. That little Black child going to Yale. You can sit there, you know what? She's got to be the only 9-year-old that can sit there and say that she has her work documented at Yale University. And don't think 10 years from now, she ain't gonna put that application in, which I hope she is. But again, I love seeing stories like that where basically another professor sees her and says, you know what, let me show you what you could be. Representation matters. It matters greatly. But I just thought that was cool. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. So I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do get out of here, some shameless plugging because we have moved to new equipment. So I apologize if the graphics not up. But definitely check out my boy Vaughn at BigVZA Dot on all socials. BigVZA Dot on Facebook, BigVZA Dot on TikTok, on Instagram. He does have beats he does do for sale. He also does his BigVZA Dot question on TikTok. Weird dude, but I love him. But definitely check him out. Of course, yours truly, Black Fox 447 on all socials. I usually post to give my reviews on everything that I read and watch and play, and sometimes gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I always want to say this because I want to start 2023 off this way as encouragement. And what I mean by encouragement is to each and every one of you that are watching me and listening to the sound of my voice. There is no competition between me and you. I want you to succeed. I want to be your biggest cheerleader. I want to root for your successes. I want to root for your breakthroughs. I want to root for when you have made it, because the only thing stopping you from getting from point A to point B is not another person. It is simply yourself. Once you remove that limitation, your possibilities are freaking endless. But I will definitely be there to celebrate you, especially if you're Black or a person of color, and even some seasoned male folks. I will celebrate y'all seasoned male folks, but you unseasoned male folks, well, y'all know where y'all can go. But also the link at the bottom, let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you'll copy and paste that link into your browser, take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook group for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, Offense Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know about the show. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Your opinions on stories we covered. And if there's stories that we did not cover, let me know, because I want to do the proper research and bring you back the correct information, because what this show is about is correct information, not misinformation, as a lot of shows do. So also, if you are going to be out and about and traveling, especially if you are traveling either abroad or across states, understand that coronavirus, HSV, RSV, and many variants are still out there. Please, oh, please protect yourself. Please wear a mask if it's required. Wear a mask if you're going to be in close quarters. And if you're sick or feeling symptoms, stay home. The only way we're going to beat this pandemic, because trust me, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, is to take care of ourselves. If we take care of ourselves, then we can take care of others, and that's what's going to get these numbers down. That's just the only thing I ask. But the last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, guys, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind, but we are providing a very logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black 4-star military general in the armed forces. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by your paycheck? Why do we elect different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through.